Hello, everybody. This is Keziah, Chair of Women Ed. I am absolutely delighted that you're joining us this afternoon with some of our Department for Education colleagues. As you may or may not know, the department is reviewing some of the NPQ suite. They're quite a long way into it. I'm delighted that I have been asked to be part of the expert steering group. I don't feel like an expert. I just turn up and I bang on all the time. And I know lots of you will either be facilitators or you'll be recipients. So we're really delighted to hand over to Esther, who's just going to talk us through things, and hopefully it'll be really interactive today and you'll be able to ask any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Keziah. Yeah, I'm here today to talk to you a bit about what we've heard through the review so far from our expert group with Keziah, but also from kind of lots of different other meetings with unions and things. Want to hear your views as well, and my colleague Matt is here as well to join us. And I used to be a teacher and Key Stage 2 Senko up in Bradford, and yeah, so I think professional development is just very important to me. Yeah, just kind of like personally as well as kind of in my role, because yeah, I think it like one of the reasons I kind of left teaching was I just didn't feel like I had that support in school, and I didn't feel like I had those opportunities to really like learn and develop, and I know how important that is. So yeah, really kind of keen to talk to you a bit today. So I will share some slides and then we will go into kind of breakout groups for a bit of a discussion. So I'll be in one room and then my colleague Matt will be in the other room. We will take some notes, but they will be anonymous, but just so we can make sure that we're feeding that into our massive database of insights and kind of really hearing everyone's different views. And yes, so I will share my screen, and please feel free to just like ask any questions while I'm going through. I'm usually on Teams, not Zoom, so you'll have to forgive me if like I can't see people's hands up or I'm doing something wrong when I'm sharing. So I think it says I'm sharing. Am I sharing?
Yes.
Yep.
But your slides haven't come up yet.
It says you've started screen sharing.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's it.
Does it look like the right thing? I'm not showing like all my personal life here on the screen. I can't see everyone as I'm sharing for some reason. No, okay. So yeah, today we're going to talk to you a bit about the review. So the plan is kind of, yeah, done a bit of a welcome and intros. We'll do a sort of overview of the revision and principles. We'll talk through the kind of frameworks, call for evidence, delivery, and then we'll kind of go into our discussion. So yeah, we announced the review of NPQs in January 2025. And we're considering both kind of like the evidence, so the kind of like what is in the qualifications, what's being taught, but also thinking about kind of delivery issues, so kind of people's experience of like face-to-face, online assessment, and all those kind of things. And as we sort of said here, it's really important that it works for kind of all leaders, you know, regardless of their background, their circumstance, and the kind of setting that they're in. So kind of really want to hear if that's the case today. When we kind of announced the review, there was 4 kind of key things that we said that we would look at, and that was because they'd come up before we'd sort of started any engagement about the review as things that people wanted us to think about and change. So they're kind of in the top box there. So I'll just briefly go over those. So the first one is kind of around like, you know, how do we actually ensure that all our teachers and leaders have the skills they need to support pupils with SEND. Leadership progression, so actually, you know, recognizing that there's lots of different levels of leadership, and actually you need different skills and different knowledge at different levels. So how do we make sure that that's different in the NPQs, and how do we support that? Workload reduction, so how can we support workload reduction through NPQs? And interestingly, you know, this is maybe not always necessarily like being really explicit about it, but it's thinking really carefully about like your practices, kind of how you employ staff, the kind of way that you think about professional development, the way that you engage your staff in professional development, and then also kind of operational leadership. So, you know, things like HR or budget management, But once we've started engagement, like lots of other themes have come up. So I'd say a really big one is kind of around people leadership. And that's like, you know, think about things like emotional intelligence, you know, psychological safety, recognizing that it's really challenging to be a leader and to have those kind of challenging conversations. Actually, how do we support leaders with that? Something around kind of the flexibility. So actually, you know, and I think this really chimes to kind of thinking about flexible working and really supporting staff from lots of different backgrounds to access. You know, actually, how do we make that flexible for staff who might, you know, go on maternity leave, for example, or, you know, staff who take some time out and then come back to work? You know, how do we actually support flexibility within NPQs? The kind of role relevance, so making sure that, you know, the kind of pitch of the NPQs is right, and that if you're going on that qualification, you feel like you're getting the right stretch. The evidence base, so, you know, while it's important that leaders, you know, have a high quality evidence base, you know, that shouldn't always just come from outside from education. There might be great learnings from like organisational leadership or psychology, you know, about that people leadership that we should be thinking about. And so we've done a lot to kind of think about the evidence base and what we include in qualifications. Contextualisation, so how is it relevant to you in your school, in your setting, in your context. Assessment, so while people have certainly welcomed the approach we have currently, which is a case study, rather than a sort of a 10,000 word essay that we had before, because that is really, really difficult if you're a leader, is to find time to write 10,000 words. You know, we have had feedback that the current assessment process around the case study could be more relevant, or, you know, there could be greater standardization within that. So, you know, potentially ideas have come up around, you know, whether there's some options to choose from assessment. So maybe you can choose one that's more relevant to your context, for example. And then some people as well have sort of wondered, you know, how do NPQs fit in with everything else that's going on out there, with all these other sort of CPD offers? And so as part of this, we kind of have worked to think about, you know, what makes NPQs kind of a bit unique, or what should they be trying to do? So, you know, there's something about that evidence base. There's the idea that they provide foundational knowledge. So, you know, I know from being like a teacher, you know, you're never going to be able to sort of learn everything in one course, but actually there's something about kind of providing, I guess, a floor, you know, of what you need to know, a kind of really strong foundation to build on. The idea that they support career pathways. So again, we're not saying that you have to take one NPQ, then another one, and then another one, but actually they should support, you know, the variety of roles that people might take, the variety of paths that you might take through the system. You know, if you take a year out, or you take a couple of years out, or you want to specialise before you go into leadership, for example. And they should also be kind of like national and universal and accessible. And within that universal and accessible, again, it's really about, you know, the fact that regardless of where you're at or where you're coming from, you can access those NPQs. And we would also think in sort of moving forward, given that kind of people want that stretch and challenge, and, you know, we want to make sure that it's right for people. I'd like to target them a little bit more at people who are kind of really ready to take on that next step, and who have like a sufficient level of responsibility with which to apply the learning. But we definitely wouldn't want to exclude anyone. So while we'd be targeting it in this way, we wouldn't want to exclude anyone from applying. So, you know, again, it might be helpful to sort of discussion in your groups, and when we have the breakout groups, you know, how do we actually do that in practice? What do schools need? What do we need to be thinking about to make sure that everyone can access and apply that learning from an NPQ? We also launched our first kind of what we called our call for evidence in spring this year, and this was on a kind of a citizens-based platform. And we publicised that through comms, but we do recognise that not everyone felt that they could submit their views through that, because it was quite research focused. So we'll be hosting another call for evidence, hoping later this year. The date is yet to be sort of nailed down, but we'll share it through this network when we do, and that will be hopefully people feel they kind of submit their views and insights to that. And, you know, that is really important to us. You know, if you haven't had a chance to do so yet and you don't feel like you can, everything over today, you know, that's another opportunity that you can share to get more insights. And I won't read all of these out because there's quite a few on there, so I'll just give you a little bit of time to have a quick look at this, but just to sort of talk to what we heard through some of our engagement so far, and through that call for evidence. So inclusion was a really big theme that came up, both for how we support that with pupils, but also how we kind of do that through our leaders, and actually how do we create environments where leaders feel supported as well. People management, professional development, so a lot around kind of holding professional conversations, role modeling effective professional development, and thinking about how we do that with support leaders to do that. Pupil well-being, so you know, that being also kind of really important, emotional, social aspects of kind of pupils, you know, linking to kind of a sense of belonging in school as well, and how do we make pupils feel like they belong, particularly in the challenging times we have now. And so the kind of process now for the way that we're kind of thinking about the content is we're kind of working on that, but we're really kind of engaged in sector. So that box there, you know, what is it that you think is a priority out of those areas? What do you want from NPQs? And then that kind of links into the call for evidence, kind of other priorities that we've got, as well as kind of our evidence review, experts like Keziah who are kind of working in different areas. And then that's kind of going to testing groups and individuals. So again, you know, we're kind of working with people from organisations like BayMed or from EDI networks or kind of unions to kind of test what we've done so far there. And, you know, we also welcome if anyone feels like they've got expertise in a particular area, you know, we always welcome kind of other people to kind of test things with as well. And then just briefly, I've spoken to these a little bit already, but just to say when we're thinking about kind of delivery, so, you know, things like the amount of face-to-face learning, the kind of facilitation, there's a few key challenges that have come up. Tailoring, which is all about, is it relevant to me? Implementation of learning, can I put things into practice? And assessment. So again, how do we get that right? So again, really welcome kind of people's thoughts on those. And then we sent some kind of questions in advance. So yeah, what do like kind of you think leaders need to know at those different leadership levels? You know, what's working well, what could be improved? Are we meeting kind of leadership needs? Coaching and mentoring, implementation of learning, and how can we kind of support access to NPQs? So they're the kind of questions we've got for today. So we'll go into groups, breakout groups, I think, to discuss those. So I will stop sharing and we can put those questions in the chat, I think. I don't know if there's any hands up at the moment, so I'll just see if there's any.
I don't think we've got any hands up or any questions. I'm going to hand over to Vivienne to do the breakout rooms.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Esther, for that rapid run through for us. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank Esther for getting in touch with us. And it was absolutely wonderful to find out that her mum has written in our book. We were so thrilled. We were absolutely thrilled. So we're delighted to be working together in lots of different ways. Really helpful. And thank you for that. Right, I'm just going to open 2 breakout rooms and you'll just end up in one of them. Is that all right with everybody? Why is it not moving?
It's okay, Vivienne. They can just click into one of each of the groups if they just join.
Yeah.
And could one person nominate themselves or be nominated to just come back and do a summary at the end of it. So please just go in room 1 or 2.
I can't see how to do that. Sorry.
do that.
Okay. Do you want? I'm going to randomly assign people.
Go on then.
Oh, I've got
because
a join.
Maybe getting up.
It's up now.
I like to be a little bit annoying. Right. Do we want to put us as women ed in anything? Hopefully.
Yeah, just chuck us in them.
I think we all have to go in.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you just separate me and Matt, then we can do. Okay, I think you've done that already. I'll join it now. Thank you.
Why have we not moved?
Laura.
Which one are you going to join?
Is there anybody not joined?
Sorry, Vivienne, could you assign me to breakout room 1, I think, because me and Matt were in the same room. Sorry. Just to. Okay, is that room 1 or?
I'm trying to find you. Hang on.
Or maybe I can join them.
There you
Okay.
go.
Also, I guess maybe for other sectors. To allow them, like facilitators, to I guess put more of their own flavour on it, and maybe give guidance to facilitators to how much they can kind of think about incorporating their own context, or even whether we should think about training for facilitators or something to try and make sure that they feel supported to kind of bring in their own context a little bit more and things like that. So just that was part of our discussion. So interested if people have any thoughts on that, maybe before we kind of take the wider thoughts, just while we were sort of in the middle of talking that. Our group or anyone else?
It's gone very quiet. It might be worth us going to some of the breakout rooms to feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so Esther, who was feeding back from the group that you were going to be in?
I am. Yeah, Jenny.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, so we had some lovely colleagues who are teaching in international settings, as you've probably just realised. And from an international point of view, some of our NPQs are very UK-centric. So, for example, I think Claire gave the example of pupil premium. Some of our international colleagues don't have that and wouldn't know what pupil premium is. So what they found with their NPQs is that they are perhaps wanting some flexibility or incorporating an extra session just to put in some of the sort of specific items that maybe relate to an international setting more. So just that what they're basically saying is that maybe some optional modules that have content and purpose related to an international setting would be really beneficial. I spoke about my experience. I'm just about to do another NPQ, but my experience last year was with the NPQ in leading behaviour and culture. And I just found I didn't get extra release time, partly because I'm in a small setting. I'm in a small school where there's 3 members of staff. So, release time is at a premium. And I just found that the assessment window was a very pressurised week. I would have loved perhaps 2 weekends so that I could maybe not be working quite as late for as many days. Or maybe just incorporating a little bit of extra time somehow. That would have been really beneficial for me. There were so many positives though. Basically, facilitators were saying about how much they'd gained facilitating the NPQs, and they felt that it was as rich an experience facilitating as it was for the participants. And the challenge is always recruitment. I think that was it. Is there anyone in my group feel that I haven't covered their comments? Please feel free to add.
We've got a comment from Robin there, if people would like to read it. And another from Tracy.
Yeah, absolutely, around funding, and sort of it's really damaging. And I think that you can't treat somebody in a really large secondary the same as somebody perhaps in a very small infant or primary, because if you are one of 3 or 4 people, you're just not going to be able to get the release time that perhaps somebody in a large secondary would be able to get. And I think it's similar around some of those funding issues as well. Is there anyone from the other room that would like to feedback? We didn't get around to picking anybody, so I don't know whether Liz, you fancy feeding back?
I'm happy to have a go, and
that's brilliant. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Just let me know if I've forgotten anything. So we started talking about, I started talking about the leadership of SEND and inclusion in our group, because that's my area of expertise. And one of the points that I made was that I think that we need a more defined programme at executive level. So looking at, when I say executive level, this could be depending on the size of the multi-academy group or network of schools, if international, etc. It could be someone who's a CEO of a small network of schools, or it could be a regional director, for example, of a group of schools within a large multi-academy trust or network of schools. But with that focus, how you lead SEND and inclusion at executive level. And then from there, we were talking about the distinction between, like the current distinction between executive level and headship. And Liz, who was in my group as well, said, there really isn't very much difference at the moment. So that's important, because the headship program should be more context specific, ideally, sort of supporting the head to make it apply locally, which also speaks to the implementation piece as well, doesn't it? Making it more relevant. And we talked also, so Liz was talking about again, she's worked in the international, with the international schools market. So I think some of those same kind of points that came out of the previous group feedback apply there. Then we talked about the coaching and mentoring aspect. And my experience as a coach facilitating on the NPQ Senko was that it could be absolutely transformational for those colleagues, because it meets them where they're at. But some of my colleagues in the group said, but yes, that depends on the coach and the cohort. So we kind of very briefly reflected whether or not there was some kind of specific guidance or training for people doing that coaching as well, and that being potentially could be something that could help to level and support that aspect. And then I feel like there was another point that Laura was bringing to the table, but I haven't got it written down. So I don't know if Laura wants to just speak up briefly and contribute that, or anybody else in our group.
Happy to briefly talk. I was coming from an angle of NPQ LTD, so I've been facilitator on the NPQ LTD. I'd shared that I'd done my ML and SL before, and we found that me and my co-facilitator, she's just got her first headship. So we felt that we were giving them a really good offering in regards to the experience we were bringing to our sessions. But in the room, the participants were very, very varied. So not just in regards to the phase that they were coming from, but the expectation that they had in regards to what LTD was going to bring for them. And some of the colleagues there were kind of from a trust point of view, and that they had a trust role across several schools, leading teaching development. And then we had other colleagues in the same cohort who were like 3 years into teaching, hadn't led a department yet, were looking at leading teaching, which really they should have been doing the LT, I understand, rather than the LTD. So it was fine. And, you know, they all worked really well with each other. It was a really great success rate. Everyone passed their project at the end. But going back to when I did my SL and having to do a school improvement project across school, there could have been a lot more sharing between the participants of visiting each other. We promote that they go and visit each other at their schools, that they try and find commonalities or differences that they could be part of. But it was very much come out for the day, do your bit with us as a group. Go back to school. It's way too busy until we see you the next time. So I think there's still a lot of room for improvement, where I fully get school improvement projects can't happen all of the time, because that's just, they're going to lose the momentum, and schools are going to be fatigued of school improvement projects. But on the other end of the scale, like the lady was saying earlier, with not having the time and over one weekend it being really, really stressed to get that, completion done in such a short period of time, there's got to be some flexibility to there to kind of make it more suitable for the individual participant.
Yeah. No, I think they're really, really good points. And I guess just sort of play back what I heard there. Some of that. I think firstly, when Liz, you were talking about the kind of, some of the roles being similar, at like the head and executive lead, or some of those responsibilities being similar, but actually needing some of that contextualization to come out. And I guess, thinking about, I think there's another comment in the chat about send and inclusion. It really needs to be about how you lead that, I suppose, and how you actually lead change across the school. And then I think that kind of, the contextualization chimes a bit to some of the points you were saying, Laura, actually about, how the facilitator can make it kind of relevant to the people in practice, but also about how they have the kind of opportunities with their schools to kind of apply that learning, or, what their roles are. So I think be interested in people's views around how we kind of support that in schools. How do we support schools to give the participants the kind of right time out, to help them understand which NPQ is right for them, like, I guess, to have some of that time as well. And like, would there be something like a reflective exercise maybe that participants could do? We don't want to add too much workload into schools, so sort of be interested on those points as well. And then just to stay on the coaching as well, like, I can see someone had a really not a positive experience of that. I just want to say I'm so sorry to hear that, and if you are happy to talk about that further, it'd be good to understand that. But equally, I appreciate if you don't want to talk about that any further. And I think it's really important that maybe in these situations we make sure we've got, if there is coaches, that they're properly trained to kind of deal with different kind of people's circumstances and contexts.
Can I add something in? Particularly as this is a women-ed community in that way, I'm really interested in how any of the NPQs tackle the issues that are particularly specific to women leaders. because there is a difference. Certainly, Women Ed has learned all the differences over the last 10 years. And I'm wondering whether there's scope in the curriculums to actually deal with the issues that women leaders face compared to men.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think something we're exploring through the kind of the content in terms of what's being taught is actually how leaders understand the kind of adjustments they might make for lots of different characteristics. But I think I guess the way that we're thinking about it is like both for women, but also maybe people who come from like ethnic minority backgrounds or kind of also women who are disabled or staff who are disabled. So I think what we hope NPQs can kind of equip leaders with like a broader understanding of how to tackle those issues and give them some examples, because I think there's so many things that you can encounter as well, can't you, as a leader? I guess there's like menopause, which I understand is like a women's specific challenge, but there's lots of different things that kind of, you might encounter. So I think we're thinking how we can do that in the content. But I think you're right, we need to think about both delivery and actually, maybe facilitators. It sounds like some people have had some good facilitator training, but I suppose facilitators also need to be aware of people's lived experiences. And so maybe that's something we need to think about as more of a requirement, is how facilitators are also kind of trained to have that kind of right knowledge, or maybe those who are coaching or mentoring on the programme, if we decide that's something that we want to implement for all NPQs.
Is Tracy still here? Yes. Tracy, would you like to just highlight the comment you've just shared?
Yeah, we are current cohort of NPQ Sen. All the Senkos, we've got 22 on the current cohort, and all the Senkos are women, which I think that would probably present as a piece of interesting research across the country to see what the percentage of Senkos that are female and male would be. But that's a different conversation. But we have had a couple of Senkos in the face-to-face conversations when we are talking about sort of like presenting to ELT, when we're talking about theory of change, how to present, your rationale and your evidence base, that feel that they have been dismissed by leaders, executive leaders within their organisations, and they've queried whether that was down to their gender rather than their position. So and that's something that is possibly would be specific to particular organizations. But it was interesting that you've said that, Viv, and I remembered that those conversations that those women had around that, they felt they were being dismissed, and they thought that it might have been because of the fact that they were women who were making and it was particularly around funding. It was particularly around where with Senkos, it was where statutory requirements weren't being met. They were trying to advocate rightly, so for the individuals, for the children, and were not heard, not listened to.
Which
yeah,
we know is what happens very often.
Yeah. And what I know Robin's had her hand up for a little while. I would say to everybody, we've had that feedback from female CEOs in DFE groups, where they have been talked over, and it's not been great at all. So yeah, it's a challenge. Robin, sorry, over to you.
No, that's okay. I'm a women's leadership coach, and also ambassador for W Corp. So this is something very, very dear to my heart. And we've just done a bit of a research project around some coaching for women in the company, which has given some really interesting ROI stats, which might be of use to people, women, to understand how to do that, how to present themselves. And W Corp is really worth people knowing about. It's a bit of a kite mark for companies. I work for an independent special, so I'm not within the maintained sector anymore, but having that understanding of the issues, and also not just female, but you mentioned the menopause, but LGBTQ plus as well. People, women transitioning still are going to experience those things. And the company that I work in is fantastic and really forward looking, but the male leaders still need that information and that knowledge around it. of the different ways in which women, just things like recruitment, where 80% of men will apply for a job if they meet 50% of the criteria. 50% of women, or sorry, 80% of women won't apply if they don't meet 100% of the criteria. So some input on kind of unconscious and conscious bias around recruitment at NPQEL, as well as obviously, I'm the SENS as well, because we're a SENS specialist. So, but yeah, there are some very interesting stats around, and W Corp's a good place to look for those.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really helpful point. And yeah, there's so many like different things that you'll encounter as a leader, and we need to support leaders to actually be able to educate themselves as well, when they come across something that maybe they don't know that much about that topic, or they haven't come across that before. I think leaders need to be supported and empowered to go and sort of find out more. But I think you're right, it's not just like the kind of leaders that we're teaching, it's also the people who are coaching or facilitating needs kind of certain level of training so that they can put in the right adjustments and actually understand and think about their own unconscious bias. So that's something that we need to work through more with delivery, and particularly if we are coming up with any kind of coaching or mentoring models, because at the moment it isn't actually a requirement in NPQ. So we need to think, if we do make a requirement, how do we make sure there is a level of consistency within that, and how we would make sure that kind of really supports people. I did just see someone mentioned about funding in the chat as well. So at the moment, the top 50% of pupil premium settings are eligible for funding, and the NPQH is fully funded for everyone, as is the NPQ for SENCOs. So that's the kind of current kind of arrangement. We will obviously be kind of thinking about how we make sure the kind of access and equity, and thinking about that as part of the review, I guess, and in the future as well. But I suppose we do want to ensure that disadvantaged settings in particular do get that take up, to try and sort of create that kind of leveling up around the country. So yeah, just wanted to confirm on that one. I'll have a quick look at, so I'm not very good at multitasking, so I'm going to try and read the comments in the chat. But yeah, I think Tracy, you've got your hand up as well.
I have, but my menopausal brain has just forgotten what I was about to say.
Oh.
I feel safe that I can say it in this environment. I will try and remember my thread. It was around funding, particularly, but yeah, I will try and pull my thread back, Esther, and get back to you if I remember. I'll put it in the chat.
You should be able to talk about menopause. It should be safe in any flipping forum. Sorry, on my soapbox.
Definitely this one.
Definitely this one.
Colleagues, I'm mindful of your time on a sort of well, if you're in the UK, it's a really evil evening out there. If you're in Qatar, like Tasha is, and I suspect it's quite sunny. I'm mindful that just a reminder that if there is anything else you want to pass on to Esther, feel free to sort of send it through myself. There will be an additional call for evidence. So for those people that have got some really good pieces and sort of want to sort of suggest them, then please make sure that you get involved. I'm going to go back to Tracy because I think we've got an update. Yay!
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. The point I wanted to make, Esther, was around the fact that, because I expect lots of us on here as well are involved with early career teachers as well as NPQs. And I can remember a slide coming out from the DFE about this golden thread. So that was part of the early career entitlement going through to NPQs. So as being the official departmental offer for the CPD support for teachers. If it's not properly funded, then it's failing the teachers that we currently have in the system, because it's a nationally recognised qualification that goes on their teaching record. And the offer was that the early career entitlement would feed into NPQs. And I hear what you're saying about the funding for the top 50%, but we've got a trust with 14 sites, 13 schools, and that only affects 2 of our settings. And we've got colleagues that are in other schools that would really wish to take part, and it's just not feasible in terms of cost at the moment with school budgets in the fiscal state that they currently are. So yeah, that was all I was referring back to, because I remembered that golden thread kind of image that came out with the ECT and the early career entitlement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really hear that and how challenging it is, and I think yeah, we can do our best to try and secure the maximum funding we can through NPQs. But yeah, I mean, I guess as you know, like it is such a tight environment, you know, now for the government and for spending, so it's very hard. But you know, I guess over the next few years we can see if there's like more opportunities to get that funding. But at the moment and in the next year, I don't foresee us being able to change that. But we'll do our best to kind of keep, yeah, I guess asking for the money. Yeah.
Please keep asking.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's a bit of a scrap, isn't it, in the DFE to get what's there.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep on doing that. Colleagues, it is sort of what I think we said that we were going to do this for 45 minutes. We're already 6 minutes over, but the conversation has been absolute quality. A reminder, there'll be another call for evidence. A reminder that if you want me to pass something on to Esther, then please email it to Keziah@womened.com and I will make sure that happens. There are lots of other mechanisms as well. I think it's fair to say I've never seen the DFE quite as engaged in stakeholder engagement as it is at the moment. They are, you know, Esther and team, you are talking to everybody all the time about every element of this and genuinely listening. So thank you ever so much for that. I don't know if anybody has anything, you know, last minute thoughts on, you know, Jerry Springer moment. I expect most of you are way too young to get that reference. Is there anything anyone else wants to add or say? If not, I'm going to give Esther the last word.
Literally just to say thank you so much for everyone's time. Like I said, we're feeding this all into like very much synthesizing everyone's thoughts. I just really appreciate everyone giving their time, you know, after work. And if you have anything else to say, you know, you can always get in touch with me or Keziah. Really happy to kind of pass on my email. Yeah, and just thanks for your engagement and all for brilliant leaders out there as well. Yeah.
And thank you so much, Esther, for asking us to join you on this kind of conversation. And we'll send everybody an email via Eventbrite after this. And Esther's offered her DFE email that you can directly contact her as well. So you've got a couple of sources there to do. And thank you very much from all of Women Ed in everybody coming and joining, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.